All right, gang, it's time to get rolling. Hope all is well in your world. My name's Erik Hatch with Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching, based out of Fargo, North Dakota, but impacting everywhere we possibly can. I'm elated to be with you this fine day, as well as my partner in crime, Robby T. Superb dude, a new haircut. He's lost a couple pounds, so he looks skinnier, and he shaved this morning. So, Robby, tell us about yourself.
Oh man, grew up here in Fargo. Been working with Erik for 4 years now, and it's been the best ride of my life. So that's me. Got two kids. You guys want to hear about that? One that's 7.5 months old, and the size of like a 1-year-old. So he's a monster. He's a tank. That's me. That's my life.
You said you have two kids, so that's one kid. Who's the other kid?
Yeah, other kid is Jocelyn, and she's the most opinionated little 3-year-old you'll ever meet, which makes her one of my favorite kids in the world. So I love her.
Robby, good to have you with us. You and I are going to be bouncing back and forth today. Folks, if you are watching live, please ask us questions as we go. We want this to be interactive. We're going to spend up to the next hour talking and connecting, and we want to answer all your questions. Today, here's what we're talking about is how to scale your real estate business, how to go from zero to hero, how to go from chump to champ, and how to build it well. Hatch Coaching has been around a couple of years, and we are doing monthly webinars. So please, if you go to coachingwithhatch.com, you can see all our old webinars that have great things on leadership and scaling and the ISA model and everything in between. So we want to be able to bring as much value as we can to you. But now we want to talk about how to scale your real estate business. And the best thing I know is to talk about where we've been that help establish where we're going. By the way, I apologize for the glare you're getting up here on my forehead. Fluorescent lights and the receding hairline make for a very shiny day. Yikes. Every time I look at myself, I get caught up and get all fluttered in the wrong sort of way.
I think you look beautiful. I don't know why you're hating on yourself.
No, I'm not hating. I'm just reflecting. Literally.
Don't worry. Actually, my wife and I had a conversation. I'm balding as well. So,
well, something to look forward to. Yeah. All right, gang, here's where we've been. I jumped into real estate full-time. I did it part-time for about 5 years, jumped in full-time in 2011. 2011, I thought I was king of the world. I had been an independent agent with an independent brokerage. I then joined up with a major brokerage and was on my own. I then joined a team as a buyer's agent. And then moved on from that back to being an agent on my own. And then I found myself, that was all part-time life. I found myself in 2011 jumping in full-time. I even kept a side gig. I was doing ministry on the side about 15 hours a week to try to keep the bills paid. And I was scared to death of jumping into this real estate thing. Working full commission is a stressful game. And that stressful game freaked me out. But as I got rolling in 2011, I managed to sell 52 homes my first year. And it was exciting. The energy was palpable in my world. And I had hired a part-time assistant, a college student, to help me out halfway through the year. I hired wrong. I hired a good person, but I hired incorrectly. I put the wrong person on the wrong seat of the bus, and I was the wrong manager and the wrong leader. And then we said, well, hey, we got something great going here. So we started a team. I figured I had been full-time for a full year. Why not start a team? And that was dumb. And yet I only know to fail forward, and I only know 100 miles an hour. So 2012 started a team, and on January 1st, 2012, we had 4 people on our team. Fast forward a year later, we opened up an expansion market an hour away. We were doing commercial real estate across the state of North Dakota. And we had our team in Fargo, and it was all a flaming dumpster fire. And with that, we still had a great year production-wise. We sold 192 homes. We had 13 people on our team at year end, and I was 114 of those 192 homes. It was a chaotic and crazy time. Jump to 2013 now, and all the proverbial crap hit the fan. I had people leave my team. I got kicked out of the brokerage I was working at because I was a bad leader, a bad manager, and I had simply failed my people. And so I was given the gift of starting over, and from there, everything changed. And I get the privilege of talking with you all right now on this webinar about how to scale your real estate business. And I want to start first with how not to scale your business. And whether it's real estate or anything else, I hired people to benefit me. And I think that's the foundation piece that I first want to start with, is that I hired people to help me reach my goals so I could have what I wanted. Their goals really didn't matter to me. They were a part of the system. I hired according to how I thought I was supposed to hire, and I simply did my thing and hoped that they knew how to do their thing. And the change that I had to make and the privilege that I had in 2013 when I started over was I knew that I could only be successful through osmosis. And yes, I could sell a lot of houses, but my goal was now to help them sell a lot of houses. And I could dump all these things to an admin team, but I really needed to teach them and help them see how they could be managers and leaders in our world. And so instead of everybody working for me, which is what happened in the original scaling process, I now work for everybody else. And that foundational piece, that one thing, has been a major different milestone. And Robby, you came into our world 4 years ago. So right as we were kind of starting over, what lessons did you learn and what things did you see with this?
What was really interesting was I got to see a little bit of you, Erik, before this mindset shift happened of it being all about you as a business to you transitioning it to being about we. And one interesting piece, and we even saw some of those things carry over into those 4 years, these last 4 years. Years 1 and 2 of Hash Realty, I think for the most part, the goal setting, just a simple example, goal setting was on you were the one creating the goals. And really what it was is that was just signaling that it was still somewhat top down. What's really crazy is we just did our quarterly retreat last week. And we did a lot of goal setting. We talked a lot of numbers, but none of those numbers were Erik's numbers. They were just a reflection of the amount of work that people said they wanted to do to hit a goal. Now you compiled them, you broadcast the message, you got the troops all rallied, you were working for them, but those weren't your numbers anymore. And I think that's just a really telling example that the goal setting of our business isn't on your shoulders anymore. And it hasn't been for a while, but really fully this year, you were facilitating. You were facilitating the conversation, and the whole business brought the numbers to the table. You were working for us, helping us get to where we wanted to go. And by proxy, of course, you're going to get to where you want to go.
So let's fast forward now. We find ourselves wrapping up 2017. This year, we're going to sell as a team between 650 and 675 homes, placing us, we think, as probably one of the top 35 teams or so in the country. And we've gotten here in 5 years. And today's topic, today's theme is how to scale your business. And we want to help show you that way. Again, whether you're in real estate or another business, you're going to find themes and messaging that are really important and to take note on. Again, a reminder, if you have questions, please fire them at us. We want to be as helpful as possible. But I want to start with this, and this is, I think, one of the foundation pieces is when do you make that decision to actually hire someone? Like, when do you know you're ready to grow your business and to grow your team? We have to think of it this way. I'll go back to 2011 and what my life looked like is of the 52 homes that we sold in 2011, I spent maybe $1,000 in marketing to sell 52 homes because it was all sphere and referral that I was working. And that's where it was so important to go deep with is if I'm going to have a business and a foundation that's going to be long-standing, I think it has to be rooted in who you know. Now, I see one of my buddies on the line right now, and he picked up and moved from Fargo, North Dakota to another town down in Florida. And he can't rely on Sphere and open houses, or excuse me, on Sphere and referrals and that sort of thing to build his business. He didn't have that luxury. And so instead, the idea is it's the rise and grind mentality. And that's what has to be there for whomever, however, and whenever is the idea of rising and grinding. For me, I had to figure out how to work my friends, my sphere, how to work Facebook and social media really well, because I was so afraid of going broke. I sold 52 homes and made a nice amount of cash in 2012, and or 2011, but I was so scared of what was going to happen, because that foundation piece, although secure, was only secure for 6 months or 12 months, and I didn't have a proven track record. And so for a lot of you right now, you may be saying, well, I'm not sure my foundation is secure enough to start scaling. And I'm a believer in going deeper versus wider, right? I think we can have this idea that we want to try a lot of different things. I want to try Zillow, and I want to try Realtor.com, and I want to try farming, and I want to try circle prospecting, and I want to try, and I want to try, and I want to try. You're going to try yourself into a hole, and you're going to leave yourself a day late and $1 short on most of those. I chose to go deep with my sphere. And the deeper you go, the stronger your foundation is. If you're thinking literal construction, right, Robby? The deeper you go with a foundation, the stronger it's going to be. In fact, I was on a trip with one of my buddies this weekend who runs a construction company. And we were talking about the telephone poles that we see along the interstate. And he said that those are roughly 50 feet deep, and then they have major supports all the way down just for one telephone pole. And to go 50 feet deep is not an easy thing by any means. But they have to go deeper with a foundation rather than wider. And that's what you need to do before you decide to make that first hire. And before you decide to scale, before you take on a new lead source, is be a master of something rather than a generalist of everything.
Yeah, 100%.
Robby, tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that's 100% correct. And that actually leads to, I think, the second piece of really what scaling has meant for us. And then we kind of unknowingly did it. But really what we've done from day one is we have always believed in leveraging somebody's skills, taking somebody, finding out what they love to do, what they're passionate about, what their purpose is, what are their skills, and let's take you and go and put you in line with that. And that's when one of our biggest pieces when it comes to scaling is instead of being that generalist that does 10, 15, 20 things, and in real estate, you can break up the transaction into so many different pieces. What we ended up doing was breaking it up so each of those pieces was going into the hands of somebody that loved doing those things. So I think you're hitting it on the head. You're 100% correct.
Yeah, and that provides a nice transition, because you have to say when, and then you have to say who. Let me be as articulate as I possibly can with the when. When do you grow your business? A lot of times, if you're asking the question, you may already be too late.
Yeah.
If you say when's the best time to do something, my answer is usually going to be yesterday. Because we know with full transparency that if you're at a point where you have business that isn't getting tended to, you have leads that aren't getting responded to, or even most importantly, if you aren't great to your family, because you can only give so much and so much of your time and focus. And if they suffer and if they struggle, whew, you know, I'm fortunate enough. I worked 90 hours a week for 9 years to have the ability to work 60 hours a week now. And that's all by choice. And I love what I do, you know? But the question is when do you decide? And I'd say go deeper versus going wider. And when you figure that you've moved towards mastery, or at least are very close to that, now it's time to start bringing on some leverage.
Yes.
And we can talk about who to hire, but there's two different types of who's. The first who is what staff member, what team member do you hire? And I'll cover that. And the second is what you talked about, Robby, is what kind of person are you bringing on?
Right.
This is a piece that I didn't spend enough time on, and it's one of the reasons why I failed, is because I knew that I needed to hire an admin, and I did. I hired an admin, but I didn't hire the right admin.
Right.
Robby, what does a right admin look like? Because I think that's the first hire. In fact, it's the first and the second hire. The first hire is an admin to take the stuff off your plate that you're drowning in.
Well, and I think what it comes down to is, what are you not good at? I think that's what you got to guide your decision of. You got to get somebody that's going to complement you. In your case, Erik, we're going to use the DISC terminology. You're a high I, a high D. So you're direct, you're dominant, you're social, gregarious. You're a natural born salesperson. with that being said, details ain't your thing, right?
Preach, brother. Preach.
Yeah, exactly. What we needed to find was somebody that was opposite. Now, most admin that fall that you were looking for were more of the SC, CS personality. So they were detail oriented. They were a little more calm, patient, and a little more steady. And that's what you needed in your life. That's in terms of who. That's what you want in terms of their shape.
Mm-hmm. Even more so, I think you want to find somebody who is the right culture fit. And culture is such a washed down word nowadays. People say it all the time. I need to find somebody that I love, somebody that I trust, somebody that I know has that same drive and work ethic and character that I need. I need somebody to call me on my BS. Robby does that a lot. And I need people in my world that are going to lift me up. And that is so essential when it comes to finding the right who. In addition to that, we think 50% of who you hire is the culture piece. I think 25% is, are they hungry? And in fact, I was talking to one of my coaching clients earlier today, and he said one of the mistakes he's made is he doesn't cast a big enough vision in the hiring process of how much work and how much accountability are going to go into being into his world. He'll bring them in and try to lure them in and say like, oh, real estate is sexy, you know, and to get him in. And then once he's in, he's like, but this is a lot of work and you got a lot of stuff to do and I'm going to hold you accountable. Instead, as we've learned, the best way to scale is from moment one in that interview process and that recruiting process, you say, this is not for average people. This is not for folks that want status quo. This is for people who are willing to bleed, sweat, and cry their way to the top. Getting somebody who is a fighter for you in moment one is going to change your entire trajectory of your business. Somebody who shows up early and stays late and continually is protecting you. That kind of person is the right who. The final 25%, remember 50% culture, 25% hunger. The final 25% is, do they fit the right disc profile? And it matters. But I would hire somebody who is a DI, but is those previous aforementioned things before I'd ever hire an SC that doesn't have the right hunger or culture.
True.
Okay. So first person you hire, admin. And this admin takes those things off your plate that you are drowning with. They have to love this kind of work. They can't just be a buddy. There's an interesting trend that happens when you hire friends. And one of the first hires I made, one of my key hires, was a very good friend. And I love her and I care about her and I led incorrectly. And so it ruined a friendship and it ruined all these other things. And man, hiring friends is a really difficult thing because unless you're ready to have very tough conversations with people who you hold dear, and most of us aren't ready for that yet, you're going to get yourself into some trouble. The second person you hire is an admin. Step one, admin. Step two, admin. I've messed up on this a time or two. And I can tell you the second person that you're hiring is now scaling your business. The first person takes all that stuff so you can breathe again. The second person now helps you implement the things that you want to do, that you've been dreaming of doing, but you just haven't had time to do. Now, could you have this second person take the stuff off your plate and the first person be your marketing person and your business growth and development person? Sure. Yeah, I don't care. I simply think that you're going to be setting yourself up in a better sort of way if you're hiring people based on first breathing for you, and second is then a leverage piece. Now, if I were to do it all over again, and that's always a fun thing to say, if I were to do it all over again, after I hire my two admin, the next person I would hire is not a buyer agent. That's what the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book tells you, and that's what I think a lot of folks will say. And I think a buyer agent can work. But for me, I want you to remember, when I hired my first admin, I was scared to death that daddy ain't got no money and I work in a full commission job and I could end up having to let this person go because I was bad with money. And as somebody who's been 1 foot in bankruptcy 2 different times, you get a little skittish and you get a little cautious. And so I would, instead of hiring a buyer agent, where if you take a commission, if you say this part goes to the buyer agent and this part stays with the team leader, I would rather hire a showing partner. And that showing partner is a way for me to say, I'm going to train you so you have full permission to work with my clients.
Right.
And I'm going to make sure that every step that we take is going to instill that you are ready to go and to have the privilege of working with these people. Because Robby, correct me if I'm wrong, but the real estate industry is broken right now, is it not, on how people come in and how they practice on their clients?
If you think about the selling point of, hey, do you want to come join my real estate team? It's usually this. Hey, come, I'll have a desk sitting for you. You're not going to make any real income for about 6 to 12 months. So I don't know what you're going to do. And then on top of that, you're just going to get thrown to the wolves and go and do it. We're not going to have any intentional shadowing time. You're just going to get thrown to the wolves. And if you think about it, it's no wonder that we don't attract the cream of the crop, because the system is flawed. Who wants to sign up for that? I mean, it's a flawed system. It really is.
The thing that I've learned is that I don't want people to come to my world for transactions. I want them to come to my world for transformation. And that has been a different approach. Remember, I work for my team. You, if you're a rainmaker, you work for your team. They don't work for you. So rooted in all this has to be, we've talked about when to hire and who to hire, and we're going to keep building on this foundation piece. But rooted in all this has to be leadership. From moment one, the second that you bring somebody into your world, if we're going to build a foundation, I want you to watch this. At the base of my business, and hopefully yours, is we put God and family first. And that's what matters most. That's what we're building upon. And here's how most people's worlds look after that is it goes clients, and then it goes community, and then it goes your team, right? And if you're building that up, all of a sudden you're giving less and less to those later things that I mentioned. But if you're doing it right, and if you're scaling right, God and family is first. And the moment that you bring on another team member, your first team member or your 100th team member, your team comes next.
Yes.
And you, Robby, if you could see Robby right now, his neck is going to hurt from nodding so much right now.
So true.
So it's God and family. It then goes to your team next. And I'm going to challenge you that you need to dedicate as much time to your team and your leadership as you do to your lead generation. Teaching your team to do what you do is the only way you can scale properly, because after your team needs to come clients. And hear that very clearly. Your team comes before your clients. That has to be reflected on your calendar. That has to be reflected in your habits. And when you show up every day, it's not for you to go to work on your clients first. It's for you to go to work on your team first. It's the reason why you need money in the bank. And it's the reason why you need admin to take this stuff off of you so that you can still be producing. But you can't just hire somebody and throw them to the wolves and hope that they can figure it out. You can't throw them in the deep end and hope that they can swim. And yet a lot of us have done that, myself included, too many times, is that we hire people and based on their resumes, we think that they know how to do it. And then we wonder why they aren't successful. Take a deep breath, Erik. You're getting pissed off right now. Okay. I want to say, though, that your commitment to leadership is this third practice. We need to talk about the when, we need to talk about the who, and then we need to talk about you. And in fact, you is that foundation piece, right? Is who are you going to be for your team? And your team needs a leader. It sometimes means one step forward for 2 steps back. It's the reason why when you hire admin, they have to come before you hire agents, because they're leveraging your life so that you can lead more. You lead the admin. You do a better job of supporting them, showing them how, teaching them, helping them come along. And let me tell you this, simply telling somebody, watch me and shadow me is not training enough. And is not leadership enough. Robby, talk to us about the difference between watching and seeing, hearing and listening, reading and studying.
I think there's one, and I want to finish your quote because you've taught me this, and I absolutely live by it. It's first you do something, then I'm going to watch you go and do it, and And then when I'm training someone, I'm going to go watch them go and do it. And then they can finally go and do it. It's inspecting what we expect, like you've taught me. I think it really comes down to way too many of us, actually. We expect people just to hop in and be able to do things from watching us, when the reality is that you have to be making sure they fully understand it. Because if I've done something 100 times, if I've made 1,000 phone calls, that's second nature to me. In your case, if you've helped somebody buy, helped 100 people buy homes, that doesn't mean that I'm going to understand it just from watching it once. So you got to be inspecting what you want them to expect. You have to be challenging to make sure they understand it. If I've learned anything from people, they'll say they heard something, that they learned it, when in reality, if I said recite it back to me, they couldn't even do 2 pieces of that. So you have to slow down. You have to do it first. You have to have them watch it. Then you need to have them recite it back to you, watch them do it, then they can go and do it.
Broken down as watch me first, and don't see me, watch me. There's a difference. If I tell you to read a book or I tell you to study a book, you show up differently, don't you? And if I tell you to listen to something or to hear something, like I hear the cars driving by my office right now. I hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, but I'm listening to the conversation I'm having. And you have to encourage your team to listen and to watch and not just see, and to study and not just read. After that, then you have to do that same to them to make sure that they know what they're doing before they can ever go and do it. And that takes an arduous amount of time. And if you are ever going to scale, we again start with foundations. And your foundation has to be built on leadership, and it has to be built on hiring the right people to do the right jobs. Okay, we're going to shift here. We've talked about who, we've talked about when, and now we're talking about the leadership. Robby, the next thing that's imperative to talk about are standards.
Yes.
Break down for us standards, goals, and expectations.
Absolutely. So imagine it like this. At the very bottom here is standards. So if somebody wants to play ball on our team, if they want to continue to be part of what we're doing here at Hatch, you have to be hitting this minimum standard. Now, one step above standard would be right here, would be our goals. Goals are always at least one step above the standard. And everyone in our world, they have goals that are always above the standard. So standards for ISAs, for example, 250 phone calls, 20 contacts, and 2 quality appointments per day. That's our standard. Jim has a goal of making 450 phone calls, contacting 30 people, as well as booking 4.5 or 4 appointments per every single day. And then above that, you got expectations. So standards, goals, expectations. And really what expectations come down to, expectations are you expecting more out of somebody than they think is possible. So at the bottom, you got standards. It's the minimum to play ball. Goals are one step above it, or steps above it. And then expectations are what leaders are called to expect out of somebody. And the reason that's so key is simply this, is that we are self-limiting creatures. If I were to ask somebody to give me their goal, they limit themselves, because naturally that's how we're hardwired. And one really cool example of this was at our summit over a year ago. I asked everybody, what's the most amount of push-ups? Write down the most amount of push-ups you can get down and do. And one gentleman wrote down 35. And for the next 2 minutes, all we did in the room was we just coached him up. We expected more out of him than he thought he could do. And lo and behold, he got down and he did about 50 to 55 push-ups. In other words, he limited himself. And your role as a leader is to make sure that you have a standard to live by. You allow people to create goals that they want to achieve. And then you're there as a leader to expect more of them than they think is even possible.
It's imperative to scale, and that's what we're talking about today. It's imperative to scale on standards. But the only way that you are going to do this is to have clearly defined standards from moment one. I go back to the example of my coaching client that I was talking with earlier today, and he wasn't clear enough on the standards in the hiring process. You need to be clear on who you are going to be and the standards of operation for people in your world. Now, it's near impossible to manage based on these standards and to lead based on these standards, because those are your numbers, and ain't nobody caring about your numbers. But what you're saying is this is the kind of environment we're going to be in. We are not the minor leagues, we are the major leagues. And this is who you have to be in order to be in my world, and be unapologetic about those. But most people don't have written standards on the number of dials your agents make per day, on the time in which everybody is to be in the office, on the number of calls that they are to connect with, on the number of deals from their sphere, and so on. Like, standards are really important. This is your basic operating procedures for your team.
That's right.
Included in those standards are the ways in which you treat each other and your culture stuff and the things that are there. Now, the goals, this is where management comes in, and this is where leadership comes in, because if our standard for a buyer agent is 30 deals a year, but Robby has a goal of 40 deals a year, I'm going to lead him based on those 40 deals. And I'm going to make sure that Robby knows that he said he wants to do 40 deals. And so when I have to talk to him about the phone calls he's made or hasn't made, if I have to talk to him about his work in the CRM or his failure to do so, it's not about what I want. It's about what Robby says that he wants. And this is it. If you're going to scale a business, you have to have standards. But if you're going to really scale, you have to have goals that exceed those standards. And the sexiest part for me is the expectations piece, because if I say to Robby, Robby, your goal is 40, but I bet you can only do 30. I'm not sure you can do it. I'm not sure you can get there. He probably won't, right?
Why would I? It sounds really fun.
And so instead, the push is this on Robby, is to say, Robby, dude, you're so much more capable than you believe yourself of being. I know you can do more than just 40. In fact, I bet you can do 50. If you want to do 40, that's fine. But I actually think that you're built for more than that. And your playing small doesn't serve the world, Robby, and your family. What would you do with that extra X amount of dollars in a year? And what would you do? And that's where you start asking those questions, because it's about him and what he wants, not about what we want.
Right.
You work for your people. They don't work for you. And so you have to do everything within your power to build them up. So if we're going to scale, if we're going to do this right, man, the next thing you need to do after having your standards, after you have your right who, after you have the right how and when, and of course you have to have the right culture that you're creating, you need leadership. Not just you. Your business is creating leaders. A leadership development place. Robby, tell our friends watching what your journey was like, because you didn't start off as the guy kind of running our company.
No. So when I started, I wish I had a picture here, but I was this awkward looking, had just left a political campaign. I was in shambles, man. I wasn't confident at all. I was unsure of who I was when I first joined the team. Now, you vetted my background. You knew there was huge hunger to change that, and a desire in my heart was in the right places, but I wasn't put together. I wasn't polished at all. It's probably the best way to put it. But one thing that was consistent between then and now has always been this, is that I had somebody in my corner that was always consistently checking in on where I wanted to go, what mattered to me, why it mattered. And then you were always asking, well, how do I help you get there? And that's what leadership really, really rings out to me as somebody that believed in me when I didn't. Because when I joined the team, again, I was this awkward, nerdy, still am.
You're so cool now. You've just
cool now
from all that.
No, that's still me. But I lacked confidence. I lacked any identity on who I fully was. And I didn't know if things were actually possible. And I think that step one of leadership is believing in people, maybe when they even don't believe in themselves, which is that big piece of the having expectations. When I think I can do 30, you think I can do 35 or 40. That's been one consistent theme. secondly, it's you investing your time, not just in me, in the sense of giving me your time, but calling me on my crap. You weren't ever afraid to say, have you gone and done this? So those have been some remarkable pieces of my journey.
Now, Robby, I love you too much to have you remain the same.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you've told me of who you want to be in this world and the impact that you want to make. And so I have permission to be a truth teller in your world, and to tell you when something is maybe a bit out of whack. And in fact, you have the permission to be a truth teller in my world also, because I can't just give without receiving. I can't just dish out that kind of feedback unless I'm willing to receive it also.
That's right.
And so those are really important things. And what's happened now is Robby started off as our ISA and then transitioned to, we were a 2-person ISA team and Robby was leading it. To transition then that Robby started leading our script and role play time, and Robby started managing some of the business. Now Robby is our head coach on everything when it comes to our Hatch coaching company. And as a young man who's only 4 years in the business, is the best ISA in production and lead gen and lead conversion coach in the country. And that's happened because we saw something in Robby early on and we didn't shy away from it. I was never afraid of Robby leaving, although he's had offers and people trying to snipe him. I was never afraid of it because even if he were, that's a legacy that I get to be a part of, even if he's at another company. And so I give to Robby with everything I have of my time, my resources, and whatever else it may be. Now we're scaling leadership and scaling leadership. And that's what had to happen as our business grew, is we had to scale leadership. So therein lies this very valid point of how to scale your business, is it's scaling leadership. And the best way to do so is I have a 5-step process for you to scale your leadership. The very first thing is when you identify somebody, you start spending some time in a one-on-one with them. That's one of the things I did with Robby, is I spent some serious time in a one-on-one with him, and I treated him as a consultant, right? I asked him about these things that were going on in our business, and I was challenging him to get his feedback. Now, I wonder how many of us out there aren't asking everybody else around the office about ideas, and we're just taking it our way and saying, this is what we're going to do, and we sure hope everybody falls in line. But when we have somebody as a consultant, there's some pretty cool things happen. When that consultant piece starts, now we're transitioning, and that's more into a private one-on-one. So consultant is number one, and yes, you can do that in a one-on-one or a group setting, but the second step is a really intentional, scheduled, regularly occurring one-on-one. I'm taking Robby's ideas and I'm helping him think bigger and different. And I'm sharing with him some of my ideas, and I'm literally asking him to help. I'm encouraging him to start thinking like I think and to see things not from just an ISA standpoint, and rather from a business owner standpoint and a leader standpoint, to see how everything is interconnected and how you can't just make one change without affecting the whole. Now, step number 3 is we're then consulting in a small group, a small defined leadership group. In my world, we had a group of 6 people, myself and 5 others. One led the ISAs, one led the buyers, one led the listings, one led operations, and then we had our broker as well. And so we had a team of 6. And basically that group was there to listen to me talk when it started off. And it was never designed that way. We wanted them to dive in, and they were listening to my ideas. They were occasionally pushing back, but for the most part, they were just seeing how I was thinking, right? They were watching before they were actually doing. Now, step number 4 is transitioning. And when we're in our leadership meetings now, I shut up. I may say, because I'm acting as the scribe or the secretary in this meeting, I may say, all right, we're going to talk about our showing partner model today. Here's something that is an issue. And then I'm quiet while they're interacting with each other and they're logically thinking through these things. Now, not at the speed I want them to. And yet they're uncovering things that I didn't have the ability to uncover. And then I'm studying them to see if they, in fact, are thinking like I think. And the only time I interject my opinion is if we need to either abbreviate things for time, or I feel like we moved in the wrong direction. But quite often this group has surprised me, and we've ended up at a different place than I thought, and it's a better place. Which then goes to step number 5, and that is you've created leadership and you've empowered leadership to go and to do, and you've shown them those steps to take. For most of us, I don't care if you're a 2-person team or a 220-person team, my guess is an intentionality on developing leaders around you are going to change the way in which your business functions. You're going to find a point where you're going to say, oh man, we're ready to go to that next step. What do we do? And then you go, oh crap, I need another leader. And when you say, oh crap, I need another leader, that person doesn't show up overnight. And if you're going to hire them from outside your organization, they better spend 6 to 12 months just earning the right to be heard before they actually get the reins to take over your business. And so from moment 1, you have to be scaling up leadership and treating people like you value their opinion, because you should value their opinion.
That's a good effect right there. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah. Dental work. We're good. Robby, what did I miss with that? Because this idea of scaled leadership is something that a lot of people are foreign to.
So I think you're 100% right. I think maybe step number 6 is watching those leaders now go and do the same thing. And that's a piece that we're at in our world is you can expect leaders to go and repeat this process now, because that's what leadership is. So I want to ask you a question, Erik, because we've said leadership a lot. And I also think leadership is one of those terms, kind of like culture, that's kind of vague, right? It's kind of a really cool term to use. So Erik, I mean, if you were to boil it down, I'm going to limit you to 2 minutes. Just kidding. Take as long as you want. What is leadership to you? What does leadership mean?
Leadership, I believe, is the ability to inspire, the ability to impact. It's not the ability to persuade, although there's sometimes a piece in that. I think a leader needs to have their words and their actions match up. And boy, I fall short a lot. I think leadership is the ability to inspire somebody to make a change or to do something. You, of course, have to be willing to do that first. Otherwise, you're really up a creek there. Leadership, as far as I'm concerned, is we're starving for it in the world right now. Like really good, legit leadership, from our government to our businesses to our communities. We need people with the ability to inspire. And I mean, you can be a leader, but you can be a really bad leader. Like you can inspire, but in the wrong direction. Like Hitler was a great leader.
Right.
That just feels gross and weird saying. But he had the ability to inspire and to lead and to motivate. And that's not the kind of leader that any of us crave to be. But we want to be somebody who has somebody show up as a better version of themselves. And if somebody has that ability to help someone show up as a better version of themselves, I have to believe they're a good leader.
I love it. And I want to get back to what you said earlier, because I think all that's 100% correct. I think the smartest leaders in the room are usually the ones that think they're not the smartest. I think that's actually one of the biggest flaws that leaders, and I'm guilty of this. I read a lot of books, but what I've come to realize is leaders go into a room, and if you study successful CEOs, they'll go into a room and it's not the ones that are dominating the conversation. They're facilitating, and they're going in and they're trying to learn as opposed to trying to just educate. And as a trainer and a coach, my brain sometimes doesn't go there. I want to talk and I want to preach and teach. But the fact is that the best form of leadership is assuming that you don't have the best answer. Because guess what? Oftentimes you don't. Your one answer is your idea of what would work. But when you bring 5 minds in our leadership group, like Erik talked about together, Erik sits there and traditionally facilitates, because he has 5 people that are drastically different, despite believing a lot of the same things. We're really different people, different stories, different backgrounds. And as Erik said, because he took a back seat and he wanted to learn, he wanted to see where we got. Oftentimes, we'll surprise him with where we go. I'm experiencing this now with my ISAs, that these guys are way more intelligent with where things are going than I am. I just have the honor of literally hearing them talk about it and asking the questions to facilitate the conversation, because that's what my job as a leader is. It's not to have all the answers, but to facilitate the conversation that will create the answers, that will inspire them to bring that and innovate.
Well said, Robby. I want to shift here for just a moment. Most of the people watching this are probably realtors, and they want to know kind of that shortcut, that easy answer, and those. Yeah, I haven't found one yet.
Yeah,
if we're going to talk about scaling, and if we're going to have the right who, and we're going to know when to hire them, and we're going to have great standards, and we're leading people based on their goals and not your standards, and then we're creating leaders as we go. The final piece that I have to bring up is who are you going to be? And we touched upon this before, but who are you going to be? We have in our Hatch Realty world a retention rate of pushing 90% in the last 4 years. In addition to that, our agents, our listing agents average about 100 transactions per year. Our buyer agents average about 60 or 70 transactions per year. And that's an average. We have people exceeding those all the time. We have some of the top producing agents in our world, and it's because we have, I think, gone deeper with our model instead of wider. And it's who it's who our leaders have shown up to be. We've included people in on the conversation and not excluded them from it. Our team has a say in where we're going as a company. I try to treat them like they're my boss and I'm not their boss. And those things are foundational. We could spend our time talking about after you hire, let's say you hire your admin, then you bring on a buyer agent or two, then a listing agent, then showing partners and ISAs. And we can talk about all that. And I'm happy to connect with you off of this webinar and help you build the right model. I'd rather help you build the right you first. And I think that matters a little bit more. And so the you that you need to build, as far as I'm concerned, is somebody who shows up to work for your team every day, and that shows up helping them reach their goals. Zig Ziglar says that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough others get what they want. And there's the secret, gang. If you're wondering why your agents aren't producing well, it's because you hired the wrong people, or you didn't hold them to the right standard, or you didn't train them well enough, or you allowed them to be apathetic in the business. But there was one key word in all those, and that was you. You are the problem. And there is a son of a gun right there. I moved really quickly, and I found out I was the problem after 16 months of being in the business. And we started over. And you were the problem, and yet you are still also the solution. And things could go wrong again. Things could go south in a hurry, and I pray that they don't. And for some of you, maybe you've gone south, and maybe things have fallen apart. It's okay. Learn from your mistakes. Get back up again. Treat people the way in which they want to be treated. Give them your absolute best. And man, I promise you, business success will follow. It's not far off. Your thoughts, Robby?
Just one piece I want to add to that. One quote I read was, "Be the leader that you would follow," and it's a mindset that I've fully embraced. There's a lot of leadership talks about how you have to rule with an iron fist, and I think that's the difference between good leadership and bad leadership. Actually, going back to your example earlier, Eric, was be the leader that you would want to follow, the one that would inspire you to be the best version of yourself. Be the leader that, because we all want to be heard. We want to be seen. We want to be valued. We don't want to be told what to do. We want to be creative. We want to be autonomous. We don't want to have somebody dictating our every move and looking over our shoulder. Yet that's the inclination, I think, for a lot of people in this business, is to be that over the shoulder staring at what they're doing all the time. When in reality, you got to be the leader that hires the right people in the first place, so you can trust these people to go out there and change the world. like you know they can. But that doesn't come down to you staring over the shoulder at every second. The crazy thing with this whole ISA thing, and a great example of this is, Erik, how much do you know about what we do as ISAs?
Yeah, less and less every day, man. It's its own little world that I am not a part of.
And you don't need to be, right? What you need to do, you gave us principles, and you led by principles, and we enacted those principles in what we did. But in terms of the day-to-day, you would provide vision of this is where we need to go, and you would say, get us there. And that's what we continue to do. That's what great leaders do. You're the leader that I'd want to follow. And we always have to choose to be the leader that others would want to follow. And I promise you this, that if you're ruling with an iron fist, that's not the leader you'd probably want to follow. You want somebody that's going to invest time in you, that's going to ask you questions and give you guidance, as opposed to dictation. So be the leader that you'd want to follow.
Great point, Robby. We're wrapping up here in just the next couple of moments. Again, if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. Otherwise, we can ask them off of the webinar as well. I do want to close with this thought is, if you are scaling a business right now, don't be afraid to go really big. Don't be afraid to dream bigger than what you are right now. Don't be afraid to overhire. And I think that's actually been one of our keys is that we've overhired. Right now, I said we're going to do 650, 675 transactions this year, and we're built for 1,000 transactions as I say that. And we're making more hires because we believe in overhiring. If you need to know who to hire and when to hire yesterday, but always hire the right person. If you're going to gamble, I'd rather you gamble on yourself than something like the stock market or the craps table. If you know this industry, there's always going to be enough houses to sell, shift or no shift. There's always going to be enough at-bats. But those that are going to win in a shifting market are those that are built on the right foundation. And the right foundation is always going to be having the right who's, because you can figure everything else out when you have the right who's and you show up as the right who also. As we go about this and as we step into our next level of business, I'm committed to getting more of the right who's, but even more so, I need to be the right who. And that matters a lot. We need to scale leadership. We need to improve upon our standards. We need to be the country club of businesses, the most exclusive place in town to get into, and the most inclusive place once you're here. Final thoughts, Robby T.
I'm going to add on this because a lot of people, and maybe ask you a question. Erik, you had said earlier that it's God and family first.
Yes, sir.
And I think all of us would agree with that, or at least most of us. Then a lot of people tend to put clients after that, like you had talked about, where we choose to put the team first. Why not the clients first? Why not there?
My one team member affects all my clients. My one client affects me. If you can teach a man to fish, you're going to be well fed for a long time. If you can train your team members and equip them and empower them to be so much more than just. That word just is a dangerous one. I'm just a transaction coordinator. I'm just an admin. I'm just a buyer agent. If you can help them to be more than just and help them to be I am, there's a pretty big difference with that. And so training your team is creating and multiplying versions of yourself so that you can impact more people in more places. If you fail to do that, your ability to multiply is no longer relevant.
So there's a trickle-down effect of you invest in your team invests more into their people, the clients. So it trickles down through you. Awesome. I love it.
Good.
That's all I got.
Well, let's wrap up with this. I don't see any questions. Mostly people just commenting on how handsome we are. So thank you for that. I just keep scrolling through it. All I see is like, man, you guys look good. And that's so cool of you to say. This has always been a pleasure spending time with you. If you're interested in seeing more of our webinars and videos, be sure to sign up at coachingwithhatch.com, or you can see all our old things that we've done. We're going to keep hitting you with summits and activities and things to bring inherent value. But on behalf of Robby T, I'm Erik Hatch out of Fargo, North Dakota with Hatch Coaching and Hatch Realty. God bless y'all.